Hey everybody, welcome back to Football Talk with Vinny. In today's video, we're going over the Julio Jones trade. So if you don't know by now, actually this morning, Julio Jones was traded to the Tennessee Titans. The trade was a second and a fourth round pick in exchange for Julio Jones and a sixth. So obviously my first initial reactions for the trade was, I cannot believe that they only had to give up a second and a fourth. I think it's pretty crazy. I get it, he's a little older of a player, but I just think that teams just overvalue draft picks a little too much because, again, we kind of talked about it in an earlier video, how the success rate of even first round picks are around 50%, and even the second, third, fourth round, it drops significantly lower than that of even drafting a player that contributes to your team for a 5-6 year period. So, but anyways, that's what was traded. You know, and the fact that you did get a 6th round pick back, it's really about a second and a fifth, really, to get a wide receiver as good and as talented as Julio Jones. I think it's really a no-brainer for the Tennessee Titans. You know, it's funny, actually, I woke up this morning and my friend Matt, he's a Titans fan, he had texted me, he's like, bruh, and then I knew what that meant, so I had to go and check to see, and I saw that the deal was already done at that point. So obviously I know from at least one Titans fan that he absolutely loves the move, but really I don't think any Titans fan wouldn't love this move. You know, you're getting a guy who is an elite receiver, even though he's getting older. He still had a very good year last year, and I'll get into the numbers in a minute. But again, you're getting a very good, obviously future Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver. And again, if you're getting him for the next 2 or 3 years, right, you've got 2 or 3 years really with Derrick Henry and everyone else to try to win that championship. And man, their offense was very good last year, and adding a guy like Julio Jones, I mean, I just don't even know how you're supposed to stop this offense. You know, I mean, I would imagine you're still going to have to stack the box to stop Derrick Henry, because if you let the ground game kill you, then really everything kills you, because you get the play action and all that stuff going. So I think a lot of teams, when you play this team, you're going to have to stack the box, which just means you're literally going into the game understanding that both your starting corners are going to have to go up against A.J. Brown and Julio Jones and win their one-on-one matchups. You know, other than the top-end corners in the league, good luck with having even one guy to keep up with one of those receivers. You know, so from that standpoint, they may have the most balanced offense in the entire league this year, right? Sure, there's going to be more explosive offenses, you know, especially teams that have the quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, right? They'll be more explosive, but in terms of balanced, in terms of being able to beat you through the ground or through the air, they may have the most balanced offense. The only one that I think maybe would be close is Dallas, right? You might give Dallas a slight edge at the quarterback position, maybe the offensive line if they're healthy, but now you would give an edge to the Tennessee Titans at receiver and a slight edge probably at the running back position. So now let's get into the numbers. They're a little interesting. So last year he actually only played in 9 games, which is why his statistics aren't as good. But in those 9 games, he was able to have 51 catches for 771 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, if he would have played a full 16 games, his numbers actually would have been 90 catches for 1,370 yards and 5 touchdowns. Now, obviously, that is still top 10 wide receiver numbers, if not top 5. Sure, the touchdowns aren't great, but Julio's never really been a guy that catches a lot of touchdowns. Actually, if you look at his past 2 seasons prior to last year, his stats are 99 catches, 1,394 yards, and 6 touchdowns, and 113 catches for 1,677 yards and 8 touchdowns. And also, in terms of just production from Pro Football Focus's standpoint, in last year, he had an 86.3 Pro Football Focus grade, and the 2 years prior, it was 90.6 and 90.9. So again, the production did dip a little bit, but again, the fact that he was not able to stay healthy for the full 16 games was not great. But in terms of a per game basis, he was pretty much identically on the same path he was been on for the last 2 seasons. Now, obviously, it's going to be hard for him to produce the same numbers in the offense he's in, right? Because they're more of a running style offense. Also, you do have a legit stud wide receiver opposite end of you, like he kind of had at least this year with Calvin Ridley taking a step up. But with that ground game, it's going to give him less opportunities. I think his touchdown number could drastically go up, but I think his yards is probably going to go down, maybe his receptions as well. Now, obviously, I think a lot of people have mixed opinions because of his age, right? They don't know if he's going to be able to continue to be healthy, and also just if he is healthy, he's going to show a decline eventually because of his age. I am definitely not in that camp. Again, again, of course, he's going to show decline in his production, but again, you won't know if that's a decline because he, as an individual player, is declining or just the offense he's in, he's not getting the same opportunities. But again, I still believe he's definitely a top 10 receiver, probably even a top 5. So at that point, sure, if you don't say he's not the number 1 or number 2 receiver in the league, that's okay. It's not like you had to give up a bunch of picks to get him, right? I think of the Odell Beckham trade a couple years ago where the Cleveland Browns gave up a lot for Odell Beckham. And again, if Odell Beckham, obviously he's been hurt those 2 years, but with what they gave up to get him, he needed to play like a top 5 receiver to justify what they gave up. When you only give up a 2 and a 4 and get back a 6 in Julio, you're not really giving up much. So again, if he can just play to, average maybe 70, 80 catches, 1,000-ish yards and 5-6 touchdowns, I think you would take that as a Tennessee Titans fan because again, you understand his production's not going to be the same because you have A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry that are going to take some touches away from him. The last part I kind of want to get into is the actual contract because I think that also determines what you expect out of a player. And from the Tennessee Titans standpoint, when you trade for a guy, you no longer have to pay that prorated bonus. I actually talked about in a previous video how the contracts and salaries work, but they don't have to pay that. The new acquiring team only has to pay the base salary and any maybe roster bonuses that are on there. But when you look at his salary for the next 3 seasons, he is owed 15.3 this year, and then it goes to 11.5 in the next 2 years. That is a 3-year total of $38.3 million. So with that being his 3-year total, it brings his average annual value for the 3 years to $12.76 million, which if you look at all wide receivers and you look at his average contract per year, he is the 19th highest paid wide receiver. So again, you are paying him as a fringe top 20 wide receiver. And I think definitely for this year, he'll be a top 10 guy. And even if he starts to fall off in year 2 and 3 of this deal, he probably will still be a top 20 receiver for all 3 of the years. So you're essentially paying for a guy that you're going to get probably more production than what you're paying out of him. And the fact that you only had to give up a 2 and a 4 and got back a 6, you didn't have to give up much capital as well. So really, all in all, I think this is a huge win for the Tennessee Titans. Again, I think the fact that you don't have to pay him a lot of money, right? You didn't have to give up significant draft capital, and I do think he's going to be very good for them this year. All around, I really love the move for the Tennessee Titans. Now let's go to the other side of it with the Atlanta Falcons. I actually made a video about the fact that the news had broken that Julio Jones had actually requested a trade. And in that video, I talked about how it made sense because if I'm Atlanta, there's no way I'm trading this guy, right? Like the salary cap that they're now going to have to eat, even after the post-June, right? And for those of you who don't really understand what that means, when you trade someone post-June, what it really means is the bonus that you would have had to pay the player for the remaining years of his contract, you now don't have to pay it in this current season. You pay all of that next season. So you still have to pay that money. It's sort of a cap relief for this season. But in terms of what they're going to have to pay him, not only this year, but for next year as well, to me, it just doesn't make sense. He's still playing at an elite level. You would never want to get rid of a player that's playing at such a high level. But, maybe kind of almost like the Aaron Rodgers situation where if the player is requesting a trade, you kind of have no choice if he doesn't want to play for you. Now, obviously, from Atlanta's perspective, I actually did a video on the Atlanta Falcons offseason. If you didn't see that, you should check that out as well. But I even talked about it, how if they were to sign their draft picks, they would have been like -5 or 6 million over the cap. So they did not even have enough cap space to sign their rookie players they had drafted. So again, they would have had to restructure somebody's deal to create that cap space to sign their rookies. By getting off of Julio Jones, they did free up some cap space, which is now going to be used to sign some of those draft picks. But in terms of your overall roster as a team, you are definitely going to get worse from this trade, right? You now are going to have Calvin Ridley, who is going to see double teams the entire game and the entire season, because again, you no longer have Julio Jones out there to kind of show as a threat where it's like, well, you probably should be doubling Julio, and then that obviously benefits Calvin Ridley because now he's getting single covered and sometimes by the second corner. Now, we see this happen all the time in football. Usually the way it works is the number 2 wide receiver leaves the current team and signs a big deal with another team, and it usually doesn't work out because what happens is that receiver was good in that system where they were a product of getting the number 2 corner. Now, Calvin Ridley is a very talented player. He had a very good year last year. And again, there are a lot of games because, again, he did miss 7 games, Julio Jones I'm talking about. And in the 7 games that you miss, it gave him the opportunity to be the number 1 receiver for those 7 weeks. So again, he has shown flashes that he can get it done. And again, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you're obviously betting on the fact that, he's now entering his prime, so he is going to start having these breakout seasons every year now. And this is actually going to be the consistent output you're going to see from him. But make no mistake, even if he takes a step up, it still will hurt your overall offense, because when you think of what they could have had with Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, and the tight end they took, Kyle Pitts, right? They could have had a phenomenal passing offense, right? They could have been able to be easily a top 5, if not top 3 offense in the league this year with the weapons they had. Now, I believe that Matt Ryan is still a good quarterback, so they definitely have a shot to still finish as a top 10 offense, which is still very difficult to do. But I just think that obviously trading a guy of Julio Jones' caliber is never going to benefit the rest of your roster. Now, in terms of next year, when they don't have to pay Julio as much, right? You still have to pay him. Again, that's what the post-June 1st trade means, is next year you will have a cap hit for Julio Jones. It just won't be as high as if he was on your roster. So maybe you use some of that money that you're going to save for next year to maybe sign a defensive player or 2 and try to be a more balanced team. But for this current season, it definitely hurts your football team. And another point I kind of want to make, and I don't know, you guys let me know in the comments what you think. I think a lot of teams nowadays kind of overvalue draft picks, right? Everyone's looking at the draft as this kind of like savior, right? Now, yeah, sure, it's great when you draft an Aaron Donald and you draft a Patrick Mahomes, right? And those players turn out to be generational players. But what about the times you draft a Taco Charlton, right? Where a guy that you draft in the first round, that he just gives you little to no production and now is off your roster in a year or 2. I made a video a while back where, I went over some of the statistics, and about 50% of first-round draft picks don't hit, which means, they're not even starting caliber players for most of that first contract. So again, there's a lot of times where even the first round, the success rate is 50%. And once you get past the first round, it drops drastically from there. So again, the fact that the Falcons only got back a 2 and a 4 in return, if I'm Tennessee, realistically, that second-round pick could maybe be a starter. The 4th round pick is likely to not be a starter and maybe contribute on special teams only. So again, you're giving up, a potential starting caliber player, not even a Pro Bowler, just a starting caliber player, and a guy who's maybe going to make the team as a special teams player for a guy of Julio Jones' talent. I just think that, to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm just shocked that there wasn't more teams in on it, and there wasn't more value given up to get a guy like Julio Jones' talent level. But anyways, that's going to be the end of the video. Those are kind of my thoughts on the situation. Let me know what you think. And then also, if you did like the video, make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe, as it does help out the channel a bunch. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.